Iran just destroyed half of America's Patriot defenses in 5 days. That's the headline. It's clean, it's terrifying, and it's the kind of sentence your brain wants to treat as a finished fact. But that sentence is also doing a ton of hidden work. Because Patriot defenses can mean three completely different things, and most viral clips blur them on purpose. Are we talking about Patriot batteries? Are we talking about Patriot interceptors? Or are we talking about the radars and command nodes that make the whole air defense network see and coordinate? Those are not the same story. So, in this video, I'm going to do the adult thing. I'm going to break down what this claim could realistically mean, what it almost certainly does not mean, and what signals actually matter if you want to know whether the US and its partners are losing the missile defense contest or just taking damage inside a brutal, saturated environment. And I'll give you the mini payoff right now so you don't have to wait. Even if Iran didn't destroy half of anything, Iran doesn't need to. Iran only needs to prove it can degrade the eyes of the defense network and occasionally create a leak. Because once commanders believe leaks are possible, the system changes behavior. And behavior change is the real strategic win. Now, first question, is the half of America's Patriot defenses claim confirmed? Based on the most credible reporting floating around right now, the public evidence is far stronger for this version. Iran has been targeting high-value radar and communications nodes that underpin U.S. and allied missile defense in the region, including early warning and THAAD-related sensors, and there's serious concern about more interceptor consumption and sustainability. That's a real story. But half of America's Patriot defenses destroyed is a much bigger, more absolute claim, and you should treat it as a marketing phrase until it's backed by hard, consistent confirmation from multiple reputable outlets or official statements. Because here's how propaganda and clickbait work in war. They take one real fact, a radar got hit, and they build an emotional skyscraper on top of it. The entire defense is gone. So let's slow down and define terms. What does Patriot defenses actually mean? A Patriot defense is not one thing. It's a chain. There's the radar and sensors that detect and track. There's the command and control that decides what to engage. There are the launchers. And there are the interceptors, the missiles you actually fire. When people online say Patriot defenses are destroyed, they often mean any one of these. 1. A radar site got hit. 2. Interceptors are being used up. 3. A Patriot launcher or battery got damaged. 4. A missile got through. Therefore, the whole system failed. Those are 4 different claims with 4 different levels of seriousness. Now, here's the first big reality check. The United States does not have all its Patriot defenses sitting in one place where Iran can wipe out half of them in 5 days. Patriot units are distributed across multiple theaters globally, and the U.S. also relies on other layers, THAAD, ship-based systems, fighters, allied systems, and a larger sensor network. So if you see half of America's Patriot defenses, your first question should be, half of what exactly? Half of the Patriots in the Middle East? Half of a specific country's deployment? Half of the interceptors allocated to this operation? Or just half as a dramatic word that makes the claim feel catastrophic? Because half is one of those numbers that sounds precise, but often isn't. Now let's talk about what is credibly being reported that could make people feel like Patriot is getting wrecked. 1. Iran appears to be deliberately targeting a radar and sensor infrastructure that supports missile defense. This is a very smart strategy in a missile contest, because missile defense is not only about interceptors, it's about detection and tracking. If you degrade the sensors, you shorten warning time, you increase uncertainty, and you raise the chance that something slips through. And notice how that changes the story. It's not Iran destroyed half the launchers. It's Iran is trying to blind the network. 2. There's growing public discussion about interceptor burn rate. Wow. Even if defenses intercept most incoming threats, repeated salvos and drone waves force defenders to shoot a lot, and those interceptors are expensive and finite. A defender can win tactically, stopping missiles, and still be pressured strategically, because they're spending scarce interceptors every night. So the real vulnerability isn't always a battery destroyed. Sometimes the vulnerability is, we can't keep feeding the system forever at this tempo. Now, here's the most important concept you need to understand to decode this whole story. Air defense is not a light switch. It's a filter. A filter can be extremely effective and still let a few things through. And in war, a few things getting through can create a giant psychological effect, especially if what gets through hits something visible. That's why you'll see people call it failure every time there's an impact. But one impact is not proof of collapse. It's proof that the contest is probabilistic. Now let's address the 5 days claim. 5 days is another classic clickbait ingredient. It's short enough to feel urgent, but long enough that people can't easily verify the full picture. And it makes the narrative feel like a snowball. It's happening fast. But what tends to happen in real conflict is this. Day 1 to day 3 is the loudest, messiest information window. Day 4 to day 7 is where verified reporting starts converging. And after that, you begin to see behavior change that reveals what actually mattered. So, if you want to know whether Patriot defenses are truly being degraded, don't look for the loudest clip on day 2. Look for convergence and behavior by day 7 and day 14. Now, let's talk about what destroyed would look like if it were actually true. If Iran truly destroyed half of America's Patriot defenses in a region, you would likely see a rapid, visible reallocation of other air defense assets to fill gaps, a sharp shift in how U.S. forces operate, more dispersal, more standoff, more relocation, a clear pattern of increased successful penetrations, not 1 or 2, but repeated. And you'd almost certainly see consistent confirmation across multiple reputable outlets that specific Patriot batteries were destroyed at scale. That kind of event is hard to hide completely because it changes posture and produces a consistent evidence trail. Now, here's what we actually see in most credible reporting patterns in situations like this. We see targeted hits on radars and communications nodes and infrastructure. We see concerns about armor interceptor stockpiles. We see occasional penetrations, what some officials even describe as a squirter, meaning the rare one that slips through. And we see both sides fighting for perception. That is not the same as half destroyed. Now, let's zoom in on the most likely true core hiding under this viral headline. The most likely core is this. Iran is trying to degrade the regional missile defense network by targeting key sensors and creating enough leakage risk that U.S. and allied commanders are forced to shift posture. That's a real strategy, because if you can force the defender to pull assets back, spread assets out, and burn interceptors, you don't need to destroy half of anything to achieve leverage. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but are Patriot systems actually getting hit? It's possible that some Patriot-related components, launchers, radars, support equipment, have been damaged in strikes or by debris, depending on where attacks landed. But here's what you should understand. The more credible and widely discussed pressure point right now isn't Patriot launchers are being wiped out. It's the missile defense ecosystem is being stressed, especially through sensor targeting and interceptor consumption. Now let's talk about why this matters for the real world. Because missile defense doesn't exist in a vacuum. The moment regional defense confidence drops, 3 things happen. 1. Bases and assets reposition. This is where the carrier's retreating story comes from in other contexts. When risk math changes, valuable assets widen distance, not because they're scared, but because they want to remain operational tomorrow. 2. Shipping and insurance react. If the region feels more dangerous, insurers raise premiums, routes shift, and the cost of delivering energy rises, even if production hasn't changed. 3. Political pressure rises. Every successful penetration or every credible claim of penetration creates public demand for response. And response demand is where miscalculation lives. Now let me give you a simple framework that will protect you from 90% of defenses destroyed headlines. Anytime you see a claim like this, ask, is this about the Yais? Is this about the ammo, Ginak? Or is this about the hardware, Hag? Eyes means sensors and radars being hit. Ammo means interceptors being used up. Hardware means actual Patriot batteries being destroyed. Most viral stories pretend they're talking about hardware when they're actually talking about eyes or ammo. Because we hit a radar doesn't sound as dramatic as we destroyed half your defenses. Now, what's the hidden danger of the eyes story? If you lose or degrade key radars, it doesn't instantly erase missile defense, but it can shorten warning time and reduce tracking confidence, which raises the chance of penetration and increases the chance of wrong decisions. And in a crowded air picture, wrong decisions can be catastrophic. Now, what about the ammo story? This is the sustainability question. If you have to fire expensive interceptors to defeat cheap drones, you can win today and still be pressured tomorrow. And if the conflict drags on for weeks, the real fight becomes industrial. Who can replenish faster? That's why you're seeing so much discussion around stockpiles and production. Now here's the part nobody likes because it removes the clean hero narrative. Even if Iran is successfully stressing defenses, that doesn't automatically mean Iran is winning. It means Iran is playing a realistic asymmetric strategy, raise costs, create uncertainty, and force posture changes. That's not the same as dominating the sky. It's economic and psychological warfare, layered on top of kinetic actions. Now, I want to address the biggest trap in the headline: half of America's Patriot defenses. That line is designed to make you believe the U.S. is running out of protection. But in practice, there are two different running out stories. Running out of interceptors in one local area under sustained attack is plausible if tempo is extreme. Running out of America's Patriot defenses globally is not plausible in 5 days. So the adult interpretation is, there may be localized stress, localized damage, and serious sustainability questions. But the half of America's defenses framing is likely exaggeration unless there's strong, specific confirmation. Now, what should you watch next if you want to know whether the real situation is getting worse? 3 signals. First, do attacks keep targeting sensors? And do we see repeated confirmation of sensor damage across multiple sites? A one-off hit is bad. A pattern is a campaign. Second, does the leak rate rise? Not one dramatic impact, a trend. If the trend rises, defenses are getting overwhelmed or blinded more often. Third, do we see major posture shifts? If the U.S. and allies are quietly moving assets, repositioning defenses, and tightening operations, it's a sign the risk math changed, regardless of what the thumbnails say. Now, let's talk about the most likely paths forward. Path 1. Stabilization through adaptation. Defenses reposition, sensor coverage is restored or compensated through redundancy, and interceptor usage becomes more efficient. The system remains stressed, but the leak rate stays low. Path 2. Grinding strain. Iran continues pressure on sensors and keeps launching enough threats to force defensive consumption. The system works, but cost rises, and markets price a persistent risk premium. Path 3. Miscalculation spiral. A degraded sensor picture and a crowded air environment produce an incident that forces a bigger response. Not because anyone wanted it, but because the environment made a mistake more likely. That third path is the one to fear, because it doesn't require intention. It requires seconds-long decisions and imperfect information. Now I want to end with the clean takeaway you can repeat without getting dragged into hype. The viral claim, Iran destroyed half of America's Patriot defenses in 5 days, is an absolute statement that requires absolute evidence. What we do have strong reason to take seriously is this. Iran appears to be targeting the sensor backbone and stressing the interceptor ecosystem, trying to force posture changes and create occasional leaks. That's not defenses gone, that's defenses under pressure, and pressure is enough to move markets, change behavior, and raise escalation risk. Now tell me your take. Do you think the bigger strategic story is the physical damage, radars and sites being hit, or the sustainability story? The slow grind of interceptor consumption and readiness strain that becomes the real weak point over time?